Hey there, Alex Kidman with my quick video review of the TCL 20R 5G, which is this glowing looking cube right here. Now, TCL as a brand is probably best known for TVs, but the reality is they've been making phones forever, basically. Typically here in Australia under the Alcatel brand, although they were responsible for things like a lot of the most recent BlackBerry phones. They've made a Palm for some reason. But these days, they tend to prefer to sell under their own brand name. Generally quite affordable phones, a lot of hype around them, but do they live up to the hype? Well, in the case of the TCL 20R 5G, the answer is maybe. It's a sub $400 5G phone, and there's quite a few of those around right now. And in a lot of aspects, actually, this is very much the same as all the others, which is not to say it's a bad phone, not to say it's a good phone. It's just you've got to temper your expectations when you're talking about phones in this price bracket, especially when they've got 5G on the back. I should say at the outset, by the way, that 5G absolutely is not a reason to buy a smartphone right now. 5G is a sort of nice to have. Some people might say, well, it's a future-proofing step. And I suppose there's a small argument in that, but the reality is 4G ain't going to die in the time frame that this phone dies. So 5G is kind of useful to have if you have a use for 5G. Right now, though, in consumer land, there's really not too many use cases like that. I mean, arguably, things like big crowds and so on, being on 5G and being on a 5G network that can handle more load would be great. But right now, who wants to be in a large crowd? So let's talk the positives and the minuses. The design is fairly plain. You've got this 6.52-inch display capable of up to 90 hertz. That's quite nice. Again, not totally unique. TCL does kind of spice that up with what it calls NXTVision or NXTVision. And this is basically a color contrast mode for video and photos. Ups the vibrancy. Some people will love it, think that it makes their stuff look great. Others might find it a little garish. You can opt to switch it on or off. Same is true of 90 hertz. And if you're thinking, well, why does a phone need 90 hertz? Simple answer here is refresh rates aid in smooth screen scrolling, some smoother gameplay when you're playing mobile games, although the game has to support it. One critical thing here is if you play some older Android games, some of them always only think, oh, the screen's just going to be 60 hertz. You pump it up to 90 hertz, suddenly they're running way too fast. So keep an eye out for that, but you can switch it back and forth. The phone itself comes in, well, this grey finish, or there's a blue variant. I probably would have preferred the blue variant myself, but that's personal taste. Otherwise, the design is, well, I mean, it's kind of standard. It really is. So fingerprint sensor on the back, vertical camera array. One little touch, which I do like, is that the edges have a very slight ridged feel to them. It's not a killer feature. It's just a nice little design touch. It makes it just that little bit easier to keep hold of, and nobody wants to drop a phone, let's face it. So at the rear, you've got 3 lenses, which might get you very excited in camera terms. But again, it's all about tempering those expectations. There's a primary 13 megapixel f2.2 sensor. You'll do most of your shooting with that. There's a secondary 2 megapixel macro sensor because every cheap phone these days has a macro sensor on it, and it's really not very good. You will struggle to get really pleasing photos out of it a lot of the time. A lot of patience. Yes, you can get some nice enough shots, but that's about as close as you're going to get. And finally, the third sensor is just a 2 megapixel depth sensor. You never shoot directly with that. It's just to provide those kind of focus effects for your shots. Around the front, there's an 8 megapixel selfie camera. Again, fairly much par for the course. And this has been the story for TCL for a long time. I'm yet to see a TCL phone with a camera that really blows me away, even within its price bracket. But honestly, this is perfectly adequate. Not great, but not spectacular. One thing to be aware of here, like a lot of phones, when you fire up the camera app, it'll say, oh, I've got zoom functionality. You can zoom in on things. And it's true, you can, but you're only ever using digital zoom. So it's just cropping in the picture. And honestly, you lose quality pretty darn fast. In every instance, you're going to be better off getting closer to the subject. And I would say you'll almost always also be better off taking your standard shot and then throwing it into a photo editing app and trying to crop it down that way rather than relying on the phone to do it for you. On the processor side, like almost every cheap 5G phone you can buy right now, this is running on the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. It's got 4 gig of RAM and 64 gig of onboard storage. Thankfully, you can boost that with microSD cards if you find the need. Still, that's pretty much a middle range kind of recipe, especially that 4 gig of RAM if you want to run particularly intensive gaming apps or other Android apps, or if you wanted to multitask. That's going to be a bit tougher on that 4 gig barrier because Android's not great at that level. Still, it's in line with what you'd see in this price bracket. It's a capable phone without being an exciting one in that sense. It is, of course, also 5G capable. Now, only sub-6 5G here in Australia. International models might vary. Don't ask me. And again, look, as I said at the outset, the reality of 5G right now is you don't need it. It's a nice to have, not a must have. I've been able to hit speeds kind of 200 to 300 meg in my own testing, which obviously sounds great. But bear in mind that 5G is a real battery hog. If you're going to be using 5G an awful lot, you're going to run the battery down an awful lot faster. There's a very solid use case to say, hey, actually force this thing to only connect at 4G and you'll have a more pleasant experience because the battery will last a bit longer. Now, the TCL 20R 5G is an Android 11 phone with TCL's UI launcher on top of it. Kind of garish, but again, kind of run for the course. My only concern here, Android 11 is great to have on a phone like this, but TCL has not been particularly fast with Android upgrades. I'm not talking about full OS upgrades. I'm not expecting this to have Android 12 rapidly or before the Pixels or anything. But as I'm recording this, it's sitting on the October security upgrade, and I'm recording this in January. So TCL, you need to pick your game up here because I think users do deserve reasonably secure phones. And some competitors in this space are doing a much better job of those timely upgrades. On the battery front, you're only getting a 4,500 milliamp battery. Now, that might sound smallish in its category, where often we see a lot of 5,000 milliamp batteries. But the reality in day-to-day usage is actually this runs pretty well. A day's battery life, yeah, that's totally doable. In moderate usage, you can run any phone flat if you choose to do so. I will caveat again, though, that if you're using 5G an awful lot, yes, you can kill the battery on this pretty darn fast, but that's true for any 5G phone, even those ones that cost you thousands of dollars. Recharging is via USB-C. It's really great to see so many manufacturers just saying, yeah, micro USB out the door, and TCL's on board with that. There's no wireless charging, but you really wouldn't expect it at this price point. So should you buy the TCL 20R 5G? Well, look, I think if you're looking for that kind of sub $400 phone, it's definitely worth considering. It does have a lot of competition, and I'm thinking here of brands like Motorola, for example, in that space, has some really nice options as well. There's some decent Nokias. It's well worth looking at the Samsungs as well. But this is an impressive TCL phone in the sense that it's good value. That's where it really stands out. It's not exceptional in any one area, but it doesn't really fall over relative to what you could get for the same money in that kind of space as well. Here in Australia, the TCL 20R 5G at launch sells for around $349. Now, over time, that'll probably drop. You might be able to find bargains on it. That'd well be worth exploring, of course, down the track. TCL at CES has just announced a whole raft of new phones coming soon, so you could, in fact, expect to see this drop in price pretty rapidly. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the TCL 20R 5G. Got any questions, anything you want to know? Drop me a line in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as everyone always says at the end of every YouTube video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.